A wealthy driver walks into Judge Caprio's courtroom, convinced rules don't apply to him. His name is Jonathan Mercer, a finance executive with a reputation for cutting corners and expecting the world to adjust around him. Today, he's not here for one mistake. He's here because he ignored multiple summons, each one more urgent than the last, brushing them off as if public rules were optional fine print. From the second he steps inside, his posture tells the story. Chin up, phone out, eyes scanning the room like he's assessing a potential investment rather than facing the consequences of his own choices. He's not worried. He's annoyed that he even has to be here. What he doesn't know, or refuses to believe, is that this courtroom runs on something his bank account can't buy: respect. And when Jonathan tries to talk over the judge, when he dismisses the charges as a waste of everyone's time, when he treats the process like an inconvenience beneath him, what follows becomes a lesson money couldn't buy, and one he never saw coming. Because in this room, respect matters more than wealth. And everyone is about to see the cost of forgetting that. Tell us where you're watching from, because entitlement looks the same everywhere. It's a gray Tuesday morning in Providence, the kind where the city feels quieter than usual. Inside the municipal courtroom, though, there's a low hum. Chairs shifting, papers rustling, people whispering as they wait for their names to be called. Judge Caprio takes his seat with the familiar warmth that's made strangers around the world feel like they know him. A moment later, the bailiff leans toward him with a subtle sigh. "Judge, this next one, Mr. Mercer, he wasn't exactly cooperative in the hallway." Caprio raises an eyebrow. Not surprised, just making a mental note. On the docket, 3 ignored summons, all tied to parking violations, each one piling up because Jonathan Mercer apparently had more important things to do. No prior history of violence, nothing dramatic, just a pattern of entitlement that had finally backed him into a corner. When Jonathan enters, the courtroom picks up on his energy instantly. He strides in like he's late for a board meeting, not a hearing. Designer coat, expensive watch, phone still in hand. He doesn't bother silencing it. He just flips it face down on the defendant's table like he might need to take a call at any moment. A woman in the audience watches him roll his eyes at the paperwork. She shakes her head, whispering something that makes the man beside her snort under his breath. Jonathan exhales loudly, the kind of sigh meant to be heard. He taps his fingers impatiently, checks his watch again. When the clerk asks for his name, he gives it with a flat, dismissive tone, as though the very question insults him. Judge Caprio glances up from the folder, studying Jonathan. Quietly, he's seen this before. People who think the courtroom bends to their schedule, their priorities, their sense of self-importance. But he doesn't say a word yet. He just nods for the clerk to proceed. The charges are read aloud. Jonathan doesn't look at the clock or the judge. His eyes stay fixed on the door as if planning how fast he can leave. But today, things won't move at the speed he's used to, and neither will the truth he's about to face. Judge Caprio starts the way he always does. Calm, steady. Giving every person who walks through those doors the same basic dignity. "Good morning, Mr. Mercer," he says, voice gentle but grounded. Jonathan doesn't look up right away. He finishes whatever he's typing on his phone, sets it down with a soft clack, and finally mutters, "Yeah, morning. Can we make this quick?" A ripple moves through the courtroom, not dramatic, just that collective, subtle shift you feel when a room silently goes, "Really?" Judge Caprio waits a beat, not offended, just disappointed on instinct. He's met teenagers more respectful than this. "Well," Caprio replies carefully, "we'll move as efficiently as we can, but we do need to go over the summons you haven't responded to." Jonathan scoffs. Actually scoffs. "I mean, I get 1,000 emails a day. These things get buried. This whole process is ridiculous. The clerk's eyebrows jump. Someone in the back tilts their head like they misheard him. Even the bailiff's posture tightens a little. Caprio interlaces his fingers, leaning slightly forward. Mr. Mercer, these weren't emails. They were mailed notices. 3 separate ones. Jonathan shrugs as if mail is beneath his attention. I don't really deal with that stuff. My assistant usually handles whatever's important. That word, important, hangs in the air like a challenge. Judge Caprio's voice remains level. Are you suggesting these court-issued summons weren't important? I'm saying they shouldn't require me to be here in person for parking tickets. Jonathan replies, tone clipped. This is a waste of time for both of us. A young man in the audience lets out an accidental, incredulous laugh before covering his mouth. Even Jonathan hears it. His head snaps back with irritation. Caprio holds steady. Mr. Mercer, I assure you the court does not operate to inconvenience anyone. But when summons are ignored, it becomes necessary for us to address the matter formally. Jonathan leans an elbow on the podium, slouching like a bored student. Fine, whatever, let's get through it. And that right there is the first real shift. The moment the room feels the clash between entitlement and patience. Caprio doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. Mr. Mercer, he says slowly, if we're going to proceed, I need your full attention and your respect for this process. Jonathan rolls his eyes, not subtly. The full head tilt eye roll of a man who has never been told no in a room that matters to him. The courtroom goes still. Judge Caprio sits back, calm but firm. This isn't a negotiation. This is a hearing that you were obligated to attend months ago. Let's continue. For the first time, Jonathan looks directly at the judge, not with respect, but with irritation that someone isn't bending to him, and everyone watching knows this is only the beginning. The clerk begins reading the details of the first ignored summons, but Jonathan interrupts almost immediately. Yeah, I know what it says, he snaps, waving a dismissive hand. Can we skip the script? I parked there for 5 minutes, 5. Judge Caprio folds his hands patiently. Mr. Mercer, we'll go through each matter in order. Please allow the clerk to finish. Jonathan lets out a loud exhale, theatrical, annoyed, and leans back like he's enduring a presentation he didn't approve. The audience shifts again, some exchanging glances, others simply staring at him with open disbelief. The clerk continues, unbothered. Failure to respond resulted in an additional late fee. Jonathan cuts in. Look, the fees don't matter. I can pay whatever. That's not the issue. That word, whatever, drops with the weight of a gold brick. Not bragging, not loud, just casually dismissive, in a way that draws every eye to him. Caprio's expression barely changes, but the gentleness thins. The issue, he says, is your responsibility to answer the summons in a timely manner. Financial ability has nothing to do with it. Jonathan gives a humorless smirk. For some people, maybe. A couple of people in the gallery audibly inhale. A woman near the aisle mutters, "Wow," under her breath. The judge continues, steady as stone. Respect for the law applies equally to every person who comes before this court. Jonathan chuckles, actually chuckles. Sure, if you say so. The bailiff steps a little closer, not dramatically, just enough that the room feels the shift. Judge Caprio goes on, reading from the second summons. Jonathan interrupts again, this time with more bite. Can we skip the lecture? I have a meeting in an hour. Caprio closes the folder just for a moment. Mr. Mercer, you are not being lectured. You are being heard, which is more than your previous choices afforded you. Jonathan shrugs, unimpressed. Look, Judge, I know how this goes. You read the violations, we talk, I pay a fine, and we're done. I don't need the commentary. The judge pauses, studying him with the quiet weight of someone who sees more than what's said. Do you believe, Caprio asks softly, that you have nothing to learn from this process? Jonathan answers instantly. Honestly, no, I already know it's pointless. Another ripple through the gallery. Someone whispers he's digging his own grave, but Jonathan keeps going. I run a finance firm, he says, as though that explains everything. I deal with real problems. This, he gestures around the courtroom, this is just bureaucracy slowing people like me down. It's the kind of sentence that lands like an insult to everyone present. Staff, public, system, judge. Caprio's face doesn't harden, but the serenity becomes firmer. He speaks slowly. Mr. Mercer, let me remind you that the people in this room work every day to keep this city functioning. There is nothing less than about the work done here. Jonathan rolls his shoulders. All right, fine. You've made your point. Let's move on. He tries to look bored, but something in his jaw shifts, a flicker of irritation at being corrected publicly, and then comes the fourth climb of disrespect. When Caprio begins explaining why summons must be answered, Jonathan mutters, not quite under his breath, "This is absurd." The courtroom stiffens. Finally, he takes one half step too far. He turns slightly, looking back at the gallery, and whispers loudly enough, "Unbelievable. I could buy half this room." A pin could drop. Even he seems to realize he shouldn't have said that, but his pride refuses to show it. He straightens his jacket, tries to look untouched, but the balance in the room has shifted. Judge Caprio doesn't react with anger. He reacts with something far stronger. Quiet authority. Mr. Mercer, he says, voice steady, your attitude is quickly becoming a problem. And for the first time, Jonathan's confidence visibly wavers. The room sits in a fragile stillness, like everyone is waiting to see who moves first, the judge or the man who thinks he owns the air around him. Judge Caprio lifts the third ignored summons, but Jonathan interrupts before a single sentence is read. Judge, with all due respect, he doesn't mean it. Everyone hears it. This is going nowhere. I don't have time for a morality seminar. Just tell me the number so I can pay and leave. He grabs his phone again, unlocking it with the twitch of a thumb, scrolling as if the hearing is background noise to his life. It's the final crack. Caprio's voice stays level, but something unshakable settles under it. Mr. Mercer, put the phone down. Jonathan doesn't look up. I'm checking my schedule. Put the phone down. This time the command lands like a gavel of its own. Jonathan freezes, not because he agrees, but because he's not used to someone speaking to him that way. Someone who means it. The bailiff steps forward, just one slow, deliberate pace, not threatening. Simply a reminder that the courtroom is not Jonathan's conference room. Jonathan finally sets the phone on the table. A beat passes, then he mutters, "This is ridiculous," and starts to turn. Desfair as if to leave, a move so abrupt that the gallery collectively inhales. The bailiff blocks his path with nothing but presence. "Sir, you need to remain where you are," the bailiff says calmly. Jonathan blinks, stunned. This is not the world he's used to. Doors don't close in his face. People don't stop him, not like this. Judge Caprio speaks quietly, but the softness feels sharper than a shout. "Mr. Mercer, you do not walk out of my courtroom." Jonathan's bravado falters. For the first time, he stands still, not out of respect yet, but out of realization. Control has shifted, and not in his favor. Caprio continues, voice steady as a metronome of truth. "Your conduct has crossed from impatience into disrespect. I will not tolerate it. You are here because you ignored this court repeatedly. You will not ignore it now." Silence fills the room, heavy, absolute. The power dynamic is no longer in question. Jonathan swallows hard, his posture tightening. The audience watches him shrink by degrees, his confidence leaking away in the face of a man who never raised his voice but somehow took back the entire room. And for the first time since he walked in, Jonathan Mercer realizes something he never expected to feel in this courtroom. He's no longer in control. Judge Caprio adjusts his glasses and opens the folder again, but this time the room hears something different in the quiet. A sense of finality, gravity, consequence. "Mr. Mercer," he begins, "let's address the legal side of this matter." Jonathan stands a little too straight, the stiffness of someone trying to reclaim dignity that slipped out from under him. His jaw twitches. His eyes stay on the judge now because he finally understands this isn't a meeting he can walk out of or buy his way through. Caprio lists each violation, slow and steady. 3 separate parking violations, each accompanied by a summons, each ignored. Jonathan's fingers tighten on the edge of the podium. For every ignored summons, the judge continues, the city adds a mandatory late fee. That is standard for every citizen, no matter their income, no matter their title. The word title lands softly but deliberately. Jonathan shifts his weight. It's the smallest flinch, but the room catches it. Caprio goes on. The base fine for the original tickets is one amount. The additional fees for ignoring the summons triple that total. Jonathan swallows, but says nothing. The arrogance has quieted into something else, something closer to reality. And the judge adds gently, "Your conduct in this courtroom is not without impact." A ripple moves across the gallery. Jonathan looks up sharply. "Judge!" Caprio raises a hand, calm and unshakable. "No, you will listen." Jonathan closes his mouth. The judge's voice stays even, compassionate, but firm. "This court is not here to punish you for being impatient, but your dismissiveness toward the staff, the process, and the people around you indicates a lack of respect for public responsibility." He pauses, letting the words settle, not to shame him, to reach him. "For that reason, I am imposing an additional conduct penalty, one that reflects not your wealth, but your behavior." Jonathan breathes out through his nose, the hint of frustration still there, but dulled by something new. Acceptance. Caprio finishes with a line that seems to ring through the entire courtroom. "This isn't about money, Mr. Mercer. It's about accountability, and accountability is the same price for all of us." The judge writes the final total on the order. The clerk reads it aloud. No one reacts with shock, not even Jonathan. He just stands there, bruised pride and all, because deep down, even he knows he earned this. When the clerk finishes reading the total, the courtroom stays unusually quiet. Not tense anymore, just waiting, watching, the way people do when they sense a turning point in someone who's been fighting it all morning. Judge Caprio closes the folder gently. "Mr. Mercer," he says, "before we conclude, I want to give you an opportunity." Jonathan looks up, guarded. "Opportunity for what?" Caprio's voice stays warm, but it carries a weight that leaves no room for misunderstanding. "To acknowledge what brought you here today." Jonathan doesn't speak at first. His fingers tighten on the podium, the sound of his knuckle cracking echoing a little too loudly in the stillness. The man who walked in so sure of himself now seems visibly smaller, not humiliated, but unsettled in a way he can't quite hide. Caprio continues carefully. "This isn't about embarrassment. It's about reflection. You ignored 3 summons, and your behavior today, well, it didn't help your case. I'm asking whether you understand the impact of that." Jonathan exhales slowly. You can almost see the internal struggle, pride tugging in one direction, the truth pulling in another. He glances at the gallery, then quickly away. For once, the eyes of strangers don't feel like an audience to impress. They feel like witnesses to something he doesn't want to run from anymore. Finally, he clears his throat. "I should have handled this differently," he says. Voice low, edges rough. I shouldn't have ignored the summons, and I definitely shouldn't have talked to you, or anyone here, the way I did. The words come out stiff, but real. Caprio nods gently, encouraging him without pushing. Jonathan continues softer. I'm used to moving fast. Too fast sometimes. I didn't respect the process or the people. I get that now. The whole room seems to exhale, the invisible tension dissolving like a held breath, finally released. Jonathan's shoulders drop. His gaze lowers. Not in defeat, but in something far more meaningful. Humility. Sorry, he finishes quietly. It's not perfect. It's not polished, but it's honest, and it's enough. Judge Caprio lets the apology settle for a moment, not to make Jonathan sweat, but to let the sincerity of it breathe. When he finally speaks, his tone is gentler than anyone expects. Mr. Mercer, he begins, it takes more strength to admit a mistake than to deny one. I appreciate your words. Jonathan nods, eyes lowered. But, Caprio continues, there's something I want you to carry with you when you leave this courtroom. He leans forward slightly, elbows resting on the bench, speaking not just to Jonathan, but to every person in the room and to everyone watching from behind a screen somewhere in the world. In this courtroom, character counts more than currency. I don't care if someone earns $1 a day or $1 million a year. Their worth is measured by how they treat others, not by how much they make. The room is silent, hanging on every word. Your success doesn't buy you a discount on decency? Not here, not anywhere. The rules aren't obstacles meant to slow you down. They're the guardrails that keep a community fair and safe. Jonathan swallows, listening harder than he has all morning. Caprio lifts a hand, palm open. We all move fast in life. We all get busy. But respect, he taps the bench softly, is free, and it's required. We owe it to each other. A murmur of agreement ripples through the gallery. He finishes with a quiet, timeless line. If you leave here today with anything, let it be this. The moment you forget to respect others is the moment you start losing something far more valuable than money, your humanity. Jonathan's eyes soften. He nods just once, and for the first time all day, it's genuine. As Jonathan steps back from the podium, the courtroom feels different, lighter, like everyone just watched a small but meaningful shift. The kind that reminds you why these moments go viral around the world, and here's where it connects to you, the viewer. Sometimes it's not about parking tickets or missed summons. It's about the way power, entitlement in any form, can quietly convince someone they're above the rules everyone else has to live by. Maybe you've seen it at work, maybe within a family, maybe on the street, maybe you've even caught yourself slipping into it without realizing. The question is simple. Have you ever watched someone let status eclipse their respect for others? And when that happens, what restores balance? Consequence? Humility? A single moment of truth? Would you have handled Jonathan's situation any differently, as the judge or as the person learning the lesson? No judgment here, just reflection, because stories like this aren't really about one man in a courtroom. They're about all of us trying to move through the world with a little more awareness and a lot more respect. Jonathan Mercer walked into Judge Caprio's courtroom certain that his title and success would carry him through. He walked out understanding something far more valuable. In this court, respect is earned, not bought. If you've made it this far, thank you for spending these minutes with a story where fairness wins, where humility matters, and where justice speaks with both firmness and heart. And if you believe the world needs more moments like this, more wisdom, more compassion, more accountability wrapped in humanity, then you're in the right place. Subscribe for more stories that remind us of who we can be at our best. Justice, after all, is most powerful when it teaches.